morning, everybody. Glad to have everybody here. I hope I can figure out how this works. Welcome to DaS. Once again, we have a chance to talk about my favorite subject, which is the supply chain. I've been a practitioner in logistics and supply chain from the time they used to call it warehousing and trucking. So that tells you I've been at it for at least a week. They always come up with complicated names that are unnecessary, but because it's still just warehousing and trucking underneath it all when you get to the basics. This year, CoFez's theme started off with talking about the big picture. We want to look at larger things. We want to look at opportunities. And so, rather than repeat that name, I thought what I would do is give our theme kind of the balcony view. The balcony view is something that it gives perspective. So in the military, officers are taught to be able to operate both in and above the fray. When you get in the middle of the fight, you forget the big picture. And the purpose here is to be able to step back, get up on the balcony, look down at that operation that you have, or the operation you're designing, or the operation that you need to align, and look at it from a bigger picture. Don't get caught in the weeds. Though you must work in the weeds, you've got to maintain the ability to reflect. And I think that the best way to combine the dynamics of the detail and the perspective is John Boyd's OODA loop. The orient, the observe, orient, decide, and act. The orientation piece of that is important to getting the right perspective. So let me take a second and just talk about supply chain in a real simple overview, and then we'll drive it down. So I have an old saying I tell folks that I can operate the world with a WMS, a warehouse management system, because it manages inventory, it can manage labor, and if you sequence it properly, it can manage the world. Okay? So I'm highly biased. I see the world as an order cycle. Okay? Something starts, something ends. Now, while I'm on that subject, I also have another thing that kind of is a key of mine. In your business, what's your most valuable asset? Okay. What else? What's your most valuable asset? Okay. If the answer to this really is, it's kind of a trick question, of course, as you know. The answer to this is, or hint is, it's also your shortest term asset. Deeper. It's the customer's order. None of your people, none of your time, none of your equipment, none of your anything is worth anything if you don't get an order from the client. That's why I see the world in an order cycle. The best-selling and most reprinted Harvard Business Review article is called "Staple Yourself to an Order." Okay? It was written many years ago. But if you read it, and it's about, the story is about a guy that walks an order through his manufacturing company, and he realizes that the company is actually doing everything in its power not to get the customer's money. And when you start to remove those breaks and cues along that order cycle, and I'll get to the key to that in a minute, you change the velocity of what's going on. Supply chain, in its simplest form, is three flows. The information flow, which these days everybody's focused on the most. The product flow, the physical move of goods, and the funds flow. If I do one thing today, if you leave here with one thing from this presentation, I want you to remember that the most important flow here is this one. It's not this one. It's the flow. It's about capital. Because that's why we're in business. Okay? And sustainability is going to have to be supported or drive this to make it work. Okay? Questions? You can see in the green is cash to cash. The end of this, my friends, is not till you collect the money. Okay. So, the purpose of supply chain. This is, as my friend Jack knows, this is one of my favorite lines. There's only one purpose in supply chain, and that's to increase the velocity of capital. If your supply chain, or the one you design, or the product you're designing, or the software you're designing to build products, does not do that, its acceptance will be limited, and its success is limited. Why? Because when you increase the velocity of capital, you need less of it. Everybody's trying to reduce the working capital requirements of the business. The only way you do that is to increase its velocity. So, secondly, it's optimized capital deployment. Are you getting the theme here? Capital. Okay? You distribute your manufacturing, you distribute your inventories, you manage them to the most optimized levels. You look at local sourcing, you look at vendor management, you look at all the options you have to drive velocity. What does velocity do? It is perfectly sustainable because it reduces waste. The waste is limited when you increase the velocity of capital. You're taking out noise and cost. You remove waste. Noise cues capital at rest. You can't sustain a business or a supply chain without doing those things. By the way, at the end of this, we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you've got questions, please write them down on a little pad there. We'll do it. Sustainability. Really, in supply chain, sustainability is about innovation, scalability, and alignment of all the players across the supply chain. It's the velocity of capital. So, this is the SCORE model, the supply chain operations research model. And this is how we look at supply chain on a global basis. For those of you that design products, operate manufacturing of products, or design tools to design products, how many of you think about these layers when you do that design? We need to. We can't optimize. And, Brad said earlier, the purpose of DaS is to get on the front end of the design process. Well, if the front end of the design process in engineering does not include this model, we've missed. Because this model, if this is your business, we're starting at the supplier's supplier, then your supplier, then your company, then the customer, then the customer's customer, and all the returns, end of life, that belongs to that. You've got to think at least that deep. Do your designs or do your tools include this? So, evolution is one of my favorite pictures. We started with 4 on the ground. Now we have 5 because we have 2 on a keyboard and a button and a chair. The supply chain has also evolved. Trading has been around a long time, so we've come a long way. But what does supply chain and logistics mean? It's right here. In the U.S., we're 8.5% of GDP. 16.5% of the world. When you figure that it's $77 trillion, there's a lot of money spent in supply chain. Now, what you have to understand is a fairly significant dollar amount in that logistics cost is the cost of sitting inventory. Everybody wants to think transport's the highest cost, or warehousing management, those kind. No. Significantly, it's the cost of capital where you hold inventory, whether that's raw materials, whether that's WIP, whether that's finished goods. That's a piece of this number. Now, one of my favorite facts that plays on this, so you take the U.S. 8.5. Why are we lower? Because we're the most mature logistics arena in the world. We started 25 years ago at around 18%. We've drained it to this. It won't get lower than this. We've got this thing tightened down really well in this country. Now, an interesting piece of this. So you take that number of the world GDP. Our good friends at United Parcel Service, our favorite brown trucks, carry 2% of world GDP. They carry 6% of the USA GDP themselves. They're a monster. Okay? In the US alone, they deliver 61 million packages per day. Unbelievable. And most folks don't even consider what this means. They just expect stuff to show up at their door or the bottle of water to be at 7-Eleven when, they're not thinking about that. Why am I focused on this? Because you all are designing or building tools to design. Are you thinking about this? We need to. We can't get sustainable in the long term if we're not considering these things. Okay. So the United Nations put out this statement a number of years back. Sustainable development. Are we building things that meet the needs of the present without harming the future? Okay? My friends at the EPA, I looked at what's environmental waste. The unnecessary use of resources. What am I talking about in supply chain? We unnecessarily have too much inventory. We don't distribute manufacturing. And you folks that are in engineering and design are the ones that can drive that. It's what our favorite government says. The unnecessary use of resources. I don't know how many of you have read the book by Robert Kaplan, The Revenge of Geography. But even we today, we get so caught up in technology, we forget that geography has meaning. To drive a truck over a mountain, to take a ship across an ocean while there's tsunamis or hurricanes, there's challenges out there. We still have to move things. So we need to think about geography. This is a graphic of how finished laptops move around the world. I couldn't even, if I had put how raw materials, whips, and subcomponents are done, you couldn't see anything. The next one's even more interesting. Remember we talked about waste of resources. See the circuitous runs? That's the movement of wood on this planet. My company alone imports probably 200 or 300 containers a month of plywood from China. so much wood going back and forth. It's just nuts. But I've got warehouses full of Chinese plywood. Now this one looks a little easier because this is just data lines under the sea. But still there's waste in it. So we always get enamored by the technology. We've got to remember, we still have to move stuff. And are you using the technology to be smart about how things are moved? Are you planning the movement or limiting the movement? Are you planning velocity? Are you planning velocity? If you're not, you're potentially wasting resources. Not sustainable. My friend Sandesh will recognize some of this. He's built some of these models. So, do you, when you build your software or design your products, think about where is my distribution, where is my sourcing, and where are my customers? And how many little truck shipments or train shipments or air shipments do I have to do this? How many times is this handled? Do you think about that? Sourcing, manufacturing, delivery, and returns at end of life or repair. That's the SCORE model we saw earlier. Do you think about that? Is this in your software? Is this in your planning? I said earlier I'm biased. I apologize if I'm challenging you, but that's the purpose, I think, of trying to build sustainability, is to challenge us. It's not for us to sit in our comfort zones. Okay? Now, this, by the way, is actually a very small load. If you've spent time much in China or in Indonesia or other places, this is a primary method of transport in some places. And that's small. And I just couldn't pass putting up a load of coal here. And when we watch, there's a video at the end of this I'm going to try to have time to play. When I play it, you'll understand why I've got to have coal. Now, so what's the problem? Challenges in sustainability of supply chain. Look at all these things that require movement. Shouldn't we be able to design to remove some of that? Isn't our technology smart enough to do that? Do we think about it early enough in the process? A couple of years ago, I talked about supply chain, and of course I blamed a great deal of my problems on the marketing people. Because they always want a package that's too big, too many on the counter. They always want something big and pretty. And folks don't think I usually end up cleaning up the mess of the manufacturing process because they don't think about this when they design it. This is a significant challenge. Lots of movement. My next pet peeve. Let me go back. Do you know what this is? Have you ever seen this? Or this? Do you know how big those are? 19,000 40-foot equivalent units. This one is the biggest container ship in the world. She came online last year. Okay, this one's too small. It's only 18,600. Okay, now let me tell you something about movement. The 16 biggest ships in the world pollute more than every automobile on Earth. And by the way, there's 5,100 container ships. I haven't even mentioned tankers, trampers, bulkers. Okay? These 16 ships, why? Because they burn bunker fuel. fuel is? It's the bottom of the barrel. After they refine out the highest grade petroleums, take out the gas, take out the diesel, crap left in the bottom of the bucket is what these ships burn. This ship has the capability of burning high grade jet fuel. But we put in it the highest sulfur fuel on Earth because it's cheap. This blew my mind when I got to learn this. These 16 ships, they run between 14,000 and 18,000. And this is current information. Polluting more than all the automobiles in the world together. 40% of the pollution in Shanghai, in China, is from the ships at the port. Hello? In LA Long Beach, these ships have small auxiliary engines, and they burn other fuel in them. Because at LA Long Beach, they won't allow them to burn bunker within 40 miles. That's why they're all tugged in and out. Because they can't use their main engines. Can't even fire them up till they're 40 miles out. But there's very few ports in the world that require that. Okay? This is shocking. And I'm in this business. I'm ashamed. Shocking to me. So, when you think about your design, your planning, your engineering, are you thinking about this? You should be. Now, my next favorite pet peeve, packaging. Every time there's a movement, it's put in a package. Every one of us, all the time, you gotta love these airbags. Okay? Every time you go get something from Amazon, it's got an airbag in it. 2 or 3 years ago, I stood up here and made this crazy statement that if we stopped shipping air, we could cut the amount of trucks in this country by 50%. Today, because we've gotten a little better, primarily from Walmart, that number is 40%. You could reduce the number of trucks in this country by 40% if we stop shipping air. Now, that's not meaningful. Don't say that's meaningful. Here's what's meaningful when you do your design or you go back to your company. You can tell your company that if they get rid of this, get rid of the air, you can drop your freight costs by 25%. Because in the last 3 years, every freight company has changed their rate basis from pure weight to cube. You ship on FedEx or UPS freight, it's all based on cube now. It's happened over the last 3 years. They're not stupid. They're making you pay for this air. You can drop 15 to 25% out of your freight costs if you get rid of the air. That will drive the change. Saying we can take 40% of the trucks won't drive any change. 25% off your freight cost will. Are you designing that into the product or the software? Little note. This is stretch wrap. All of you are familiar with this. Stretch wrap. Okay? The company I work for moves about 5 or 6 containers a week of used stretch wrap. Not any other kind of plastic. This particular kind is segregated and sent back to China because it's the easiest, highest quality to recycle. There are probably 1,000 containers a week from all over the world go to China full of nothing but stretch wrap. Are you designing for this? And I'm in the midst of this business. I see it. It happens. But think about again, if you took X amount of moves out of this cycle, not only you save the transport and the environmental impact of the transport, you save the impact of the packaging. So, end of life management. So who's taking care of the junk? One of the things things we do is returns and reverse logistics. And we do end of life. We take out the valuables. We properly dispose of those things. But again, how many of those are there? At each level, there's returns and end of life. Again, I'm back to the score model. So how do we build solutions to these problems? That I don't want to just sit here and tell you about the problems. I want to give you some ideas about the solutions. You know, if you just had a few less ocean containers, you'd have a green design, I'm telling you. Okay? Network optimization, I'll show you about that in a minute. These are all types of solutions about that. So back to this you saw earlier. I want to reacquaint your thought with the circuitous routes. Well, lots of folks have networks that look like this. Where's your manufacturing? Where's your vendor? Where's your vendor's vendor? Where's your customer? Where's your customer's customer? Are you thinking about that in your design? Are you thinking about that in the software that designs? Because what you can do is you can come up and use software tools for supply chain optimization and figure out how to make less a mess out of this. We have the data, folks, we have the technology. We just got to put it together and let it crunch and say, how do we optimize this? Are you doing that in your designs? Merchant transit. I used to have a large customer in Sweden. They made cell phone infrastructure, towers and batteries and cables and all that. They bought batteries in Spain. They bought cabling in Germany. They bought structure in Mexico. They made the electronics in Sweden. What did they do? If they had a customer in France, they shipped everything to Sweden. Then they shipped it to France. Hello? How many people have a warehouse sitting in California and ship half the stuff to Chicago and New York? So what we did was we said, no, you send us all the components and we'll put this center as close to the installation as possible. Their costs are up by 40%. Who knows what the carbon footprint reduced? Merchant transit is a powerful tool. Postponement. Now a lot of your software folks, these are avatars come out of software. What is it about an avatar that speaks to me about supply chain? This avatar, the final design of the avatar, doesn't happen until it's at the customer. The customization is closer at the customer, or it's self-serve. Supply chain is the very same. If you pick up a cell phone, how many of you have a cell phone that's not black? Okay? Here's what happens. Apple's iPhones, they'll ship 500,000 phones. There'll be 200,000 black, 200,000 white, 100,000 of various colors. They could have shipped 250,000 phones and 500,000 different color covers. And when you bought it, they could slap the cover on it. Less inventory, higher velocity of capital, and the covers are cheap. Why not configure it when the customer buys it? Way smarter, way greener, way better velocity of capital. That's postponement. You configure the final piece as close to the customer as possible. Do you put that in your design? How many times do you have something that you can think about assembled quite easily. Maybe, nobody's going to build a motherboard down the street from my house, but they could build preset components, and somebody could put in a couple of screws and finish it next to my house. That's what I'm talking about here. You need to think about this in your design, or in the software that designs the design. Packaging, of course. I can't get off of this one. This group at GoFizz are engineers and designers. Okay? What I want to know is, where's the software and the machinery for custom packaging? How long is it going to take for Amazon to have high-speed machines that can build a custom box for every shipment and get rid of the airbags? Tell me we don't already have the technology and the brains to do that. We just haven't. Where is it? This group at GoFizz are the very people that do this stuff. Where is it? It's not out there.
Well, it exists. It exists. We have packaging equipment that packages the furniture, packages the furniture for shipping, and the box is built on the fly. And what's even more interesting to me is that the equipment is supplied by the corrugation.
Correct.
So we don't even own the equipment.
It does exist. The problem is it's not high speed enough and small enough and variable enough. It has limitations to how many boxes it can build. But Amazon, and companies like Amazon, because of the speed they need, because they're looking at labor cost. Okay? They're looking at shipping. They look at those things. They have 8 or 9 standard box sizes. And what they do is they pre-build the boxes and feed them to the line, drop the goods in them, instead of custom build the box. That's got to be able to be done. I know it's out there, but it's not being used very much. Because if it were, none of us would be getting airbags. Please call me when you no longer get airbags. I'd love to hear it. Distributed manufacturing. I've said for a number of years that we're headed for Back to the Future. Okay? A little guy with a 20,000 square foot warehouse with 4 3D printers with 6 sets of input composites is going to end up being able to build 40% of the stuff you need in your house, and he's going to be able to do it in his local community. And every local community should have that. We've got to distribute the manufacturing, because anymore, it's not the manufacturing assets that are the real value. It's the design that's the real value. When 3D printing and additive manufacturing get a little deeper into the world, what's really going to be valuable is the design. Because anybody that has a 3D printer can make whatever you design. So we got to stop thinking that the assets of the manufacturing plant are the key to the world. Because they're not. They used to be, and rightfully so, but they're not. Have any of you seen this container? This is an unbelievable piece of equipment right here. This is a 20-foot, what's called a com van. Okay, it's like an ocean container. Inside it is a tech lab and a set of 3D printers. This is owned by the U.S. Army. They can have a helicopter drop this within 5 kilometers of the war zone and build replacement parts for a disabled tank and put it back in the fight. They do it now. It's already done. So if you think that the manufacturing assets are the key, it's changing quickly. This is agility. This is sustainability. This saves lives. And it's here already on the battlefield. All it takes is a Chinook to carry her in. It takes them 4 hours to set it up. They have 2 satellites that go on the top, download any design in the military portfolio of equipment. Any design from a satellite. And they can build it in 4 hours. Within 5 kilometers of the battle zone. So, the next solution area is reverse and returns. You know, we need to be building, when we do our designs and our software, we need to build reverse returns, end of life. We've got to build it. It has to be in our thinking. The purpose of all of this is to get you to think about that end-to-end order cycle. When you design a widget, you need to think about that order cycle. Sustainable, systemic think across the entirety. That's what's going to make us sustainable. So, that finishes up what I'm doing. We have a bunch of other distinguished folks who are way smarter than me about all this stuff. And they're going to come and pick this up and help take it forward. Any comments or questions about what I've covered here?
So, I'd like to congratulate you. Very, very nice and, how can I say, exciting presentation. My name is Eden Mahmut. I'm coming from Europe, from Romania. And we are also working in this field related to logistics. But what I wanted to emphasize is a little bit confusing the use of the word sustainable. Because in what you are presenting a consumerist view of the sustainability of the business itself, which means to have, let's say, the basic authority, the order. And order is shaping everything. So it's something which is a very important aspect. The way of understanding of sustainability from the other point of view is to consider the 3 major axes of sustainability. I mean, the continuous improvement of efficiency and so on, the integration, the consistency with the natural cycles, and 3, the, let's say, approach to the needs of the customer in the sense of not greed, but much more, how can I say, affordable things. So from that perspective, in the current developments in the software, particularly also what we are doing with a large consortium of universities in Europe, is to take into consideration models where we could integrate also the aspects of environmental impact, for instance, and different other, let's say, criteria that, of course, will dramatically reshape the whole value chain. So the introduction of any kind of new parameter into the optimization process will reshape this view. What is your point of view regarding, let's say, the evolution of the, let's say, engineering and software solutions into direction of, let's say, societal sustainability? Because here we have a major lack, which means the way of penalty of the environmental impact. So at the moment we don't have a real solution for that.
Oh, I completely agree with your perspective. First of all, I'll admit and apologize that I'm a capitalist. Okay? But I am. I drive the commercial side because in this environment in the U.S., unless you have an ROI, people aren't going to really change behavior much. No. But I think I agree completely that the societal inputs, the pure environmental inputs, can easily fit into this model and make it better. The whole thing here is to get us thinking about how to continuously continuously improve it. I didn't have the space and time to go deep into those kinds of things. I was trying to get the basics of what can we do now? What can we do now? Stop moving air. That will meet your societal goals. Stop using bunker fuel. That'll meet your goals. Okay? Reduce the packaging. That'll meet the goals. Those are things we can put our hands on now and actually make happen in today's supply chain. I want to go where you want to go. Completely. We're aligned. There's no doubt about that. Because if we do this, we'll get where you want to go. Does it make sense?
Thank you. The focus on ordering is constrained severely by what can be ordered. And so the focus on ordering is constrained by what can be ordered. And if you don't pay attention to all three of those factors, then pretty soon you run out of gas.
Agreed. Agreed. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Well, let me hand it over to Doc.